for many years, and it's kind of legendary around the former players, they used to do two-a-days out at Shelby campus. They didn't even do their training camp here. Shelby campus is out in the East End. It was almost a tease to the players because they could see civilization.
Taken by Trent Guy. Trent Guy turns the corner. Guy breaks a tackle. Now it's going to the end zone. Touchdown. Henry Miller. Good. Hard charging, and he stays on his feet. Brohm, Powell. How about this effort? Unbelievable run by Powell.
We're on a collision course with the national championship, and the only variable is time.
From the Pink Seats podcast, Jacob Lane, Vincent Lococo of the State of Louisville Podcast Network. We can't thank you guys enough for tuning in to another special episode here on the podcast. We continue along in Where Are They Now? And tonight we're joined by a very special guest, one that the name will ring a lot of bells, is still involved very actively with Louisville football, and is an all-around great guy. Could not be more excited to welcome Greg Brohm onto the show. Louisville's chief of staff. He's been with the Brohm family, Jeff and Brian, over the last several years at Purdue, but has an extensive history not only on the playing field for the Louisville Cardinals, but also off the field, working in a variety of roles, both football-related and non-football-related. He comes from a prestigious football family and is a guy who generally is as interesting as they come. Vince, I know this was a special episode for you. We joke on you a lot for the Trinity references and the Trinity jokes, but it is an honor that you wear openly on your sleeve, and it is so cool for me as your friend and your co-host to see it in real time when Trinity guests come on the show. And so it was great to get to watch you and Greg nerd out over your Trinity days.
Man, it's always cool getting to talk to the guys that came before you at be it at any level, but just with the stuff that Trinity has going on and the brotherhood that we had over there, and just that's why you go to a school like that, in my opinion. That's why I decided to go there, is, all the people before that, and even hearing him talk about Flagey High School, like that was the cool thing for me, man. Just hearing all these stories and all these people, you're like, oh my gosh, like, the first sons of Louisville football are finally home. It's finally.
And there is a lot going on off the field with Louisville football. Obviously, there has not been this much excitement, and it feels like quite some time. But tonight we're stepping away from that to talk about the history, the stories of Louisville football. And, of course, Greg is going to talk about how exciting it is to be back and how the family has really just kind of had this full circle moment. But we're excited to talk to our first Howard Schnellenberger player of the podcast show history. That is a cool thing for us.
That was wild, man. I mean, something you don't really think about that much. We haven't had a Schnellenberger guest on.
That's right. That's right. We're going to age ourselves on this show. But as some of the older fans of Louisville football who have been watching since some of the names that we're having on the show have played, it is really a cool opportunity to talk to every era of Louisville football. But if you are not aware, Greg Brohm played for Louisville football from 1988 to 1992, was a 3-year starter at wide receiver, joined the team after being a 3-sport star at Trinity High School, and obviously played alongside of his brother Jeff for Louisville. Jeff was the backup quarterback on the Fiesta Bowl team, while Greg was the starting wide receiver on that team that upset Alabama. And it's really cool to hear the story around that, some of the context of how Louisville ended up in that game and the opportunity that Howard Schnellenberger saw for the program, and also saw it as an opportunity to promote a message much larger than football itself and much larger than wins or losses. So a lot of really cool stories on this episode. You're going to hear all the stories of Greg Brohm and then how he eventually ended up being the director of operations and now the chief of staff for Louisville football. This is a great episode. We can't thank you guys enough for tuning in and listening to it. One of the first 3 that have been dropped at this point in time. So we would encourage you to go out and check out all 3 of those now. But before we get into that, subscribe to the show from the Pink Seats podcast, anywhere that you get your podcasts. Follow along at Pink Seats Pod on Twitter, tweet us, DM us to get involved in the show. And then, of course, be sure to check out the website, stateoflouisville.com. We can't thank our sponsors enough, Kern's Corner, for supporting and helping us out here on the show. And, of course, always encourage you to go and watch L&M Eats Louisville, State of Louisville, on YouTube at the State of Lou. Be sure to follow the show there and support those guys, members of the Louisville football program, who will someday get to tell their story of how they were involved in the program. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it as Greg Brohm joins the show.
We are welcoming in Chief of Staff for the University of Louisville, Greg Brohm. Greg, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Great to be with you guys.
My first question for you goes back whenever you all were at Western Kentucky, and I was wondering this as a recruit, and I couldn't really ask you guys this, but and I'm sure the players are curious too. Which one is Coach Brohm? You, Jeff, or Brian now at this point? So which one is getting the title?
Well, I think actually the players are real respectful, and they called probably all of us that. Probably my dad, Oscar, maybe he should be the one who really gets the coach title. But yeah, they're real respectful. I mean, sometimes occasionally just call me Greg. And the longer they've been around, some of the older guys, but we all consider everybody here is a coach. We're all coaching. We're all doing a little of everything. It's not like you have one job in our system or you do one thing and we compartmentalize everything. We don't do it that way. Everybody here is contributing to winning. Okay. And we do what needs to be done. So if you have an input, you might be doing a little bit of recruiting, a little bit of football, a little bit of operations. If you are somebody we trust, we're going to rely on you more. And so, yeah, Coach Greg, whatever you think fits, but players are always real respectful. So they call most everybody here coach. They probably might call you coach if you walked in.
Yeah, that was always the go-to. If I didn't know somebody, didn't know what their title was, go with coach, you usually hit it.
Yeah, you're really good. You're good. They like that. That's a title everybody likes to have, really. So I think everybody responds well to that.
Well, speaking of coach, that's a great segue into our first question. And as we mentioned before we started recording, we really are touching every era of Louisville football throughout this series. Where are they now? But you're our first player to play for Coach Howard Schnellenberger ever to appear on this podcast. To me, that's a huge deal, especially for young guys like Vince and I, who were not alive during the late 80s and 90s. But I want to ask you, what was it like playing for him? I have never gotten to ask that question before.
Well, I tell you what, it truly is an honor to have played for him because I think he's one of the greatest coaches in the history of college football. His pedigree is second to none when you look at the people he was tutored by, going all the way back to Flagey High School here in Louisville, where my dad went. And he played for Coach Schnellenberger played for Paulie Miller, who was a legendary coach, and then on to Bear Bryant, Don Shula he was with, and George Allen, and various people that he had the fortune to coach with. And when he came to Louisville back in the day, it was a huge deal. If you can imagine, if today a guy like Nick Saban took an upstart Group of Five program over, and that's kind of what it was like, because he had just won the national championship, and I think he went to the USFL for one season. I don't even think the team got off the ground, so he might have been out for a year. And then Louisville was able to bring their favorite son back home, a big coup at the time. And he was larger than life. He was old school, but he was a salesman. He could make you believe you were a lot better than you were. He was ahead of his time in the passing game. So we were running a pro style offense, and you look at the offenses now. At the time, we probably averaged about 25 passes a game, and that was like top of the
that's some big numbers.
Again, exactly. When you look at teams throwing 60, 70 passes, even sometimes now, but that was a prolific passing offense in the day. And so it was he came here and we did everything the way, actually, it's kind of like he was like the essence of football, what football is all about. We did everything, I think, the way you probably should do it. And he played the best players. It didn't matter if you were a scholarship or where you came from. He liked toughness. And it was like if you've ever seen, or thought or read about playing for Bear Bryant, it's probably what it was like playing for Coach Schnellenberger. He was a tough guy, but he was a great man. I mean, he had great values. And you always knew he was going to do whatever was best for the program to put you in a place to be successful. You always knew that. He had no other agenda than to do that. And slowly but surely, the program was built, the foundation was built, and he just lit a fire under the fan base. And you knew, and we'd like to get back to that here, that even at the old Cardinal Stadium, every Saturday afternoon, that was the place to be. There was no place else to be in town. That was where the action was. That was where the buzz, the excitement was. And that was even when we weren't maybe doing, our record maybe didn't reflect it. We brought in the biggest names in college football, and we gave them all they could handle, and we beat a few of them, and everybody knew that we were playing on it was a different level that we were playing on. So it was great experience. The things and the two-a-days and the tough practices, and I mean, they're legendary, and they're probably all true. Every story you've ever heard is true, but he was a great man.
Y'all had us whenever you all had the alumni event in there, and you were describing your all's days because the strength coach was there. I mean, myself, Mason King, Blayton Creaky, we're looking at each other like, oh man, we thought these 2 days with Coach Petrino were terrible. We wouldn't have lasted a day with this right here.
I remember the Coach Petrino. He was about as close to current day that you would get back to what we did back then. But when I came in as a freshman, and at the time, I'm from here too. A lot of people coming from far away. I came here, and after about a week, I'm like, where am I? You kind of lose track of what's even going on. But we started off, the freshmen came in early. So you got 3 days with just freshmen. So I was a receiver. We had like 3 receivers for two practices a day for 3 days in a row. So 3 receivers running every route. So I was already tired when all of the veterans showed up. And then for 5 days, we did 3 practices a day, 5 days in a row. So like on Wednesday, I was already on practice like 15 for the week.
Oh my gosh.
But we finished it off on, we did Monday through Friday, 3 days, and then we finished it off with a scrimmage on Saturday. And I think that was 21 practices in 8 days. But that's how it was done. That's how it was done back then. And it really, you really had a feeling, man, if you got through that, you were a better person for it. You were a better player. You could get through any adversity that hit you. And I think it made our team, it bonded our team really. And it made us feel like that any opponent was not the games were easy. The games were easy. That's what you wanted. They wanted the game to feel like they were easy compared to the work you put in practice.
Now, what characteristics do you and your brother take from Coach Schnellenberger? Maybe his intensity, practice style, format, things like that. What do you all kind of carry over from that era? And that
we think back to that day a lot. My dad reminds us of what Coach Schnellenberger would say or do often as well. And you know what? We even pull from Trinity and our experience there. So we pull from those experiences all the time. I would say, Coach Schnellenberger, every decision was what was in the best interest of winning, of what was best for the team. Even taking the job at Purdue when we took it, it was more in the Schnellenberger model of, I want to go build a program and not just go somewhere where they've always been good. I want to go do something that hasn't been done. So we even thought about it at that time that because there was some debate on whether to go there when we did, or whether to take the job. And I think it came down to, Coach Schnellenberger, he'd take this job because he could make it into something. And I think even our attitude and mentality as far as that went, we like to reward performance on the field. I think as he did, the best players play. We value the toughness and the grit and guys we can count on and rely on. And of course, the passing game. I think the offensive structure goes all the way back to things we did with Coach and his system. And, that philosophy of being aggressive on offense, being aggressive and really going for the win. I remember when I was a senior in a senior in college, we opened at Ohio State. We opened at Ohio State, and they had a roster. Even then, they had a roster of first-round draft picks. Kirk Herbstreit was their quarterback. Joey Galloway was on the team. They had a bevy of just tremendous athletes, and we went in there and we made a drive down the field at the end of the game. We were down 20-13, and we scored with about 10 seconds to go, make it 20-19. And at the time, there was no overtime. So we could have kicked an extra point and tied Ohio State, which would have been probably a huge deal to tie them at Ohio State. But we were going for the win. And Coach Schnellenberger, we went for 2. And you know what? We didn't get the 2. But that just set the mentality of the program that we're not here for ties. In fact, at the time there was a presidential election. It was Labor Day weekend. So George Bush, the first George Bush, was doing an appearance at the Bats game on Labor Day weekend, the very next day after we played. And he even made comment in his speech at the Bats about the American way, going for the victory like Coach Schnellenberger did. And but that's I think we take that from him, just that aggressive style, playing to win, not to lose.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, well, that's a great segue. That style is what really, in my opinion, has defined Louisville football throughout the years. And it's what I think the fan base is the most excited about in this new era, is getting back to that excitement, that playing to win, not playing it safe. But Louisville football, where we were in the 80s and 90s, Greg, is not what Louisville football is now in terms of the big stadium, the NIL, all the things that go around recruiting, being able to pull in 4- and 5-star recruits. This is, you mentioned playing at Old Cardinal Stadium and playing in facilities that were, like you mentioned, a group of 5. What are some of your earliest memories of Louisville football in terms of the facilities, just the overall aura of it with the fan base, compared to how it's grown to where it is now?
Well, I remember coming as a kid to Old Cardinal Stadium in the late 70s with my dad. And you know what, even into the 80s with Coach Schnellenberger, I think that we always perceived ourselves as we have a chip on our shoulder and we want to be in the big time. We want to play relevant football. And that was the main thing we were striving to do. For many years, and it's kind of legendary around the former players, they used to do 2-a-days out at Shelby campus. They didn't even do their training camp here. Shelby campus is out in the East End.
Wow.
Yeah, you mentioned that at the alumni event.
That's a lot.
We were like, what?
Some dope fields.
Yeah.
I've always thought about it'd be cool to play football there.
Well, yeah. Well, it was almost a tease to the players because they could see civilization out on Shelbyville Road, but they couldn't get there. They were all football at that
Run
point.
if you want.
And so if you survived Shelby campus, you had a badge of honor. But so they, I got to hear right after Shelby campus day. So we practiced where the Hilton Garden Inn is on Crittenden Drive. That was our practice field. We had some nice practice fields. Actually, for the time, we had pretty good football complex and practice fields. And playing in that stadium, even as a high school player, it might as well have been the Rose Bowl to me. I thought it was big and important, even though maybe if you were on the outside, you didn't think that. To us, it was a big deal. I don't care what anybody says. It has special charm to it, the old stadium, but we always thought it was a big deal. And I think that was what the fan base maybe thought even before it maybe even was true. We're playing big time football. And I think we willed it into existence, and so to speak. Coach Schnellenberger, that's what we're going to play, relevant football. It's going to mean something. We're going to be part of the conversation. We got something to prove. I think that mentality has driven our fan base ever since the 80s with Coach Schnellenberger on into all the other successes we've had going from conference to conference. And I think that's what they want now, is they want to play games that matter. So, that's what we're here to try to do. We're going to play. We want our games to matter, to be part of the conversation and to play for bigger things than we have maybe even in the past. So Facilities have come a long way, and this stadium is tremendous stadium. I mean, a tremendous pro stadium.
Is this the first time you guys have been back in outside of? I don't think we played you all at Purdue in Indianapolis, right? So
Yes.
You haven't been back filled in completely. This is your all's first time, right?
Well, I would always get back for one game a year during our open week.
I'd see you at the gym that week usually.
I would get back. So I've seen plenty of games here, and I don't think we'd actually been back inside the building since we left in 2009, 8 or 9.
Oh, wow.
Because there's been some renovations inside the football complex. But we've been around. We got all the sporting events, but it's really an impressive building as far as impressive stadium. And nobody has the comforts, I think, that the fans get to enjoy with the chairback seats. And it's just big and prominent, and it towers over the field. And we can't wait to fill it up and see what that atmosphere is like from the ground level. Because I've been in some fields, when it's been filled from the stands, and it's electric. So we're looking forward to that.
I'll tell you what, your headset needs to be turned up on loud. Definitely 100% have it turned all the way up on max, because whenever we played Notre Dame in 2019, I could barely hear a whisper of a play getting called in our headset. So I love it. It gets rocking. It can get there for sure.
Well, it'll probably Notre Dame coming back in this year. It'll be
we're gonna get a little louder this time around. That's right.
Those decibel levels again.
I'd love to hear that. Let's talk about the quarterback position. That's one that's obviously near and dear to your heart with your brothers playing there at that spot. But I feel like when you talk about the position at Louisville, it's become more of recently in the conversation of quarterback right? Everybody talks about Johnny Unitas. They talk about Brian Brohm, Jeff Brohm, Chris Redmond, Dave Ragone, Teddy Bridgewater, Lamar Jackson, now Malik Cunningham. But the one name that I left off there, maybe you caught the name that I left off there, it was your quarterback, Browning Nagel. I don't feel like enough people give him his flowers in terms of the greats. Talk about what it was like playing with him and what he was like as a quarterback, and maybe where you think he matches up with some of these other names.
No, hey, Brian had a great career. He had a great, especially senior season, where he ended up getting drafted really high in the draft. He had a cannon for an arm, and he was kind of like, I mean, he had a little Brett Favre in him. They were contemporaries, at the same time. He had a Favre-like arm. He did. And he kind of had the swagger, maybe an Aaron Rodgers swagger a bit. He had transferred from West Virginia. He was a transfer in.
Wow. And that's early. Did that happen a lot back in the 80s
well,
and 90s?
He had to sit out a year. Major Harris was the quarterback of West Virginia. I think it was a great quarterback there that instigated the transfer for Browning. And he pulled off a 10-1-1 season, in beating Alabama. That was probably the first time Coach Schnellenberger instituted the 2 quarterback system, because Jeff was just starting at Louisville, and he would get series every game, and he'd get a little bit more some games, and he'd get 1 or 2 series every game. So it kind of started right there, is that 2 quarterback philosophy that even happened with Brian when he came in.
I was going to say, it must be a
quarterback.
Got to be a Brohm thing.
We've used it at Purdue. We used 3 quarterbacks in a game a couple of times at Purdue. But yeah, no, he had a cannon for an arm. He is a good guy. I think he actually lives here in Louisville still.
Yeah, I think so. His son was 2 or 3 years ahead of me in high school.
He was at St. X.
Yeah, he was a St. X boy.
He had moved to Memphis for a while, but he had an underrated career. There's no doubt.
So sticking on that Fiesta Bowl, you guys had an absolute squad, and people love talking about that team, and it came more relevant whenever 2006 Orange Bowl and then the Sugar Bowl. Talk a little bit about that game.
You mentioned he tried to leave off 2018 when they played Alabama, man. I love it.
That was a rough year, man. That was a rough year for me. So I love to forget about that. So talking about those other positive times, Coach, what was it like game prepping for, the Fiesta Bowl and knowing the severity of the game and how big it is?
Well, I tell you, back in that day, it was very hard to get into a bowl game. Okay. It was very hard. We went 8-3 my freshman year and did not go to a bowl. 8-3.
What?
So then we come back and we went 6-5 my second year and didn't go to a bowl. So we were sitting there at 9-1-1, didn't know what bowl we were going to. And I do remember there was a little controversy out there in Arizona because they weren't recognizing the Martin Luther King holiday, and some teams were not playing in the game. But I think Coach Schnellenberger took that as an opportunity. We will play in that game, and we will elevate the message of Martin Luther King and chasing the dream, and the dream, lives on, or I have a dream. He really promoted Martin Luther King and backed his mission during that prep to that game. So that was kind of part of his platform, actually going into the game. Cool. We're going to take it and we're going to elevate his message. So we took that game on, and getting in the Fiesta Bowl then, I think, it was hosting national championship games, the Fiesta Bowl at that time. And we getting in that game, playing a traditional team like Alabama, great opportunity, a great experience for us to go to Arizona for that week. And our fan base came out there. They really did. And I think we caught Alabama off guard with what we brought in that game. We were up big at the end of the first quarter. And that Alabama team, they won the national championship right after that.
Yeah.
They were poised. They were poised to be a great team, and we got them in that game. But it was a great experience, and it was the culmination of everything Coach Schnellenberger had said when he got here he was going to do, and he did it on New Year's Day, and it was a very special moment.
It was always cool hearing that story growing up, obviously from my dad, but I also heard it a little bit playing with Ralph Dawkins' boy. So it was really cool to get to hear it firsthand a little bit from Ralph, always being around us and everything.
Ralph was a great player. He ran the ball just like his son did.
Yeah.
He was a receiving. Back in our offense, it was the old pro style. Two receivers, a tight end, two running backs, but the running backs caught a lot of passes. A lot of passes. And he might have been our leading receiver for the year as a running back.
People always like to mention that.
Yeah. So we were kind of running that. Kind of the West Coast. It was kind of West Coast, but it was kind of that type of deal. He was catching a lot of balls. We had a great defense. We had a tremendous defense. Ted Washington, Mark Standard,
Ray Buchanan, right?
Buchanan. We had guys everywhere on that defense, and it was really, really good team. I think we lost that year at Southern Miss, to Favre. At Southern Miss, and we tied our first game at San Jose State. We tied 10-10.
Wow!
But we won the rest.
I'm sure that one killed Coach having a tie. I know that one. Really.
Yeah, I can't remember any details of that game, but I think we had to block a field goal not to lose it.
Oh my gosh!
Coming down to special teams. Look at that, man. Yes. 3 phases of the game for a reason. All right, I'm going to ask you this question. All right, it's early second quarter, you guys are starting to put it on Alabama. Your brother goes in and he throws a pick six. What do you say to him when he comes off the sideline?
With nothing. Not at all. Nothing at all. Hey, it happens. Quarterback, you have to live with the ups and the downs. So it happens sometimes. That's why interceptions are going to happen. If you're running the offense and you're kind of just testing to see what you get away with and what good you can do, okay, you're going to have to live with an interception now and then. But it wasn't, those things happen.
I know it's not like a noogie, but some side eyes. I'm telling Dad later.
That was the early. No, nothing at all.
That same situation happened happened to my grandfather in high school playing at Flagey under Coach Paulie Miller. So his brother. Jack was the running back for Paul Horning's teams. My grandpa was the center for him. And they'd always drive down, hand the ball off to my Uncle Jack all the time. And then Golden Boy would run it in on a buck sweep or something like that into the end zone. And my grandpa was like, "Hey, Coach, let's give Jack the ball one time." And he's on the one and he fumbles it. on the 1 yard line, and he was a lot meaner than what you were to Jeff. That's for sure. On that
Sure,
one.
no.
I love that. What a good
just
brother,
move on.
man. What a good brother.
Those things just bounce off. You got to move on to the next play.
We'll continue our chat with Greg Brohm on From the Pink Seats. Where are they now? Stay tuned.
I know we talked a lot about football and on the field, but what were the aspirations when your playing career was over? Was it coaching for you right away, or did you kind of want to get into the corporate world and go a different route?
You know what? Back then you didn't plan that far ahead. I think as everyone does now. So you try to play a little bit. I did go to Canadian Football League training camp, but I ended up not making the team in Edmonton Eskimos. The Canadian Football League, came back, started working in sales, advertising sales. I've done a little bit of everything. So I think I bring a little bit of that to this job because I kind of am outside the bubble view of some things we do. So I've worked in the corporate world, worked in advertising, worked in a little bit of real estate, taught. I've been a teacher at a middle school and a high school. I've been on the radio broadcast team for Louisville football. I've done a radio show and a sports TV show even over the years. So I've done a little bit of everything. But yeah, you know what? I thought I was just going to business coach on the side, but I got the opportunity to get back in with Coach Petrino actually. And I was very fortunate that he and you know what? We do owe a lot to him and him giving us all these opportunities because he hired Jeff as quarterback coach. He brought Brian in here. He hired me as the director of football operations because I had actually been interviewing him in the post-game radio shows for the radio broadcast. And I think he got to know me a little bit. And so he hired me. And just getting in that football system, it feels right. It feels like what we love doing. So, yeah, you know what? It probably takes a while to figure out what you need to be doing. And it took a while for me to kind of navigate back into the football world, but I really enjoy it. And even over the years, I think my role has progressed, especially with Jeff as the head coach, because I think being his brother kind of 1 year apart, I can say things to him that other people can't. So they're not going to say things to the head coach that I could probably get away with.
Bit
And
your
just
tongue
give him
all
my
those.
true opinion. He is good about taking input. I do give him a lot of credit for that. A lot of coaches wouldn't take the input that he does listen, but to people but I'm able to have conversations, I think, with him that other chief of staffs and assistants and would not probably be able to have. And it's more a total encompassing the whole program and what we're doing and what we need to do to put the best product on the field. But yeah, you know what? Every experience though you have in the business, corporate world, whatever, you lean on that at some time. It comes in handy.
Absolutely. Well, Isaiah, you're talking to a fellow advertiser and marketing guy. I've worked in advertising now for going on about 5.5 years, and I love it. And I'll tell you, I'm fascinated by the role that you served with the Louisville Fire. And Vince will tell you, when I look for jobs that work in marketing and advertising that also give me the ability to call football plays. I mean, who wouldn't want to do marketing during the day and call plays at night, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? So tell me, can I please get a story of some kind from the Louisville Fire days, Greg, where you were working your day job during the day and then had to go call plays at night at a game?
Well, I mean, it happened quite a bit, actually. And
I'm like putting out an advertising fire, and you got to be like, sorry, I'll be back in a minute.
That was some fun football. We had a bunch of former Louisville players on our team at the time. Charles Sheffield, Kobe Clark, Zeke Park. I mean, we had a bunch of former Louisville guys. Loved every one of them, man. It was great to be able to work with guys after they were done in college. They're trying to still keep their dream of playing football going, and we had great relationship with quite a few of those guys. But yeah, in the minor league sports, when you come up through the ranks, you learn how to do a little bit of everything. And people are in and out. And I remember we did play one time on Derby Day. Okay,
Oh, no.
we had to play on Derby Day out in San Diego.
Oh, no.
Nobody wanted it was going to be tough to even find enough players to go to the game, who wanted to go to the game. So in order to make it happen, we left the morning of the game on Saturday, Derby morning. We played that night. So we flew out. We just had to find enough people to play. But went out and played the game, flew right back on Derby Day.
Oh my God.
But it's interesting. That was a unique brand of football. I mean, it's still, people are still, it got a lot of people. Their star Jay Gruden made his career really being a star in the Arena League. Kurt Warner, the most famous, alumni of arena football, probably. But it was fun, interesting. I compared a little bit the movie The Replacements. It kind of that was not about arena football, but it could have been.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
It was fun. It was fun. It
I
was
can only
fun
imagine.
football, and we had some great memories from that time. And the games at that time, we actually drew great crowds in Freedom Hall.
I
Great
remember
crowds.
going to those games growing up as a kid. It was some of my very core fundamental football memories was going to Freedom Hall to watch football games. I mean, at the time you had to explain to me as a 5 and 6 year old, wait, they play football inside in this little tiny arena. But I can remember some of the promotions, some of the events, the games were great. I mean, you talked about the Louisville guys on the roster. That was a big sell for people like myself growing up in Louisville football. I wish we could bring it back. I know that a couple of years ago, there was an arena team that started and it, they always kind of fizzle out, but it was truly a special time when you had the Louisville Fire around. And here it is right here, Greg, you're calling the plays and you're marketing to my parents. I mean, you get to bring both worlds together.
Exactly. It was a great time. I know my, Will Wolford was the owner of the team, and Dave Arnold, who works down at the Yum Center now, and worked in a lot of minor league sports, was part of the organization. And we had a good group. We had good football, sports people involved. We even had our games on TV.
Yeah.
There was a delayed broadcast of the game. Ken Taylor, I believe, did the TV broadcast, and we tried to make it as professional, I think, product.
I thought it was, at least growing up. I mean, y'all had me sold.
Yeah,
at least a little kid.
You got the kids hooked in. Absolutely.
A lot of fun. It was crazy. It was a lot of fun.
So let me ask you this: being around your all's dad, Coach Oscar Brohm, how proud is he of the three of you guys finally being back home? It seems like every time I see him, it is smile from ear to ear, and he can't stop talking about how awesome you guys are. So,
well, you know what? He is still a big part of our whole, football world, or just in general of our family. Gives us advice all the time, coaches us every day. He gives us football advice. Nothing is off limits. He'll during the game even he'll pull me aside sometimes and
oh my gosh, I
give
love
us what he sees. And I think he is a quarterback guru. He's kind of a guru on quarterback.
no doubt. He's done well at Trinity.
He's really good at handling people, dealing with people, I think, and players. But I think in some ways he kind of feels like his master plan all came to fruition.
100%. This was his goal, his plan the whole time.
So he's wanted this to happen. He wanted it to happen that first time.
Yeah.
We all knew this was the time. This was the right time. But yeah, he feels really good about what's happened, and so he's all about Louisville football. He has been since I was a kid. He was taking us to games, and and he's
the thing about you mentioned the calming voice. I remember, probably more than one time in high school where I would get, so frustrated and pissed because Coach Beatty said something, or Coach Beatty did this, or X, Y, and Z. And how Coach was, and your all's dad would come and put his arm around me.
Yeah.
He'd just give me that calming voice. And I guess because I knew that he knew my grandfather, it would essentially be my grandfather speaking to me at this time. And it would be the most calming voice. And I'd be like, all right, let's go play football.
Really a very, as a coach, he's one of the most optimistic people. Yeah. Like he sees the bright side, because sometimes we're like, oh man, this is looking terrible. We're looking
Yes,
terrible.
yeah.
What are we gonna? He's like, he sees the bright side, I think, on coaching players. I mean, he can be tough now. I mean, he
Yeah.
can be tough, and he stands his ground. He doesn't mince words with us, that's for sure. And he's coached so many different sports. He coached football at the youth level, at the high school level. He was a coach on the Louisville Fire. Baseball, coached a bunch of basketball. He coached female sports too. He coached the ladies in college softball, women's
Wow.
college softball, and it was coach of the year in this conference. He coached my sister when she was playing this
Not
fall.
surprised.
He coached a
Not
little bit of
surprised.
everything, and coached a lot of great players and a lot of success. I mean, he's got a good game feel for the game, like game play calling, actually coaching the game. Actually, that's what we're here. Like, the game does matter. Like, what
Yeah.
happens in the game. So
Yeah.
he has a great feel for that, and he gives us great advice all the time. To this day, he's out here all the time now. He's retired, so he goes out here all the
Yeah,
time.
open
Is
practices
he,
all
is he
the way around.
retired from Trinity though?
Not
Is
from
he-
Trinity.
All right, good. I
Still,
don't
he's
think I can go
still
see
doing
it.
Trinity. He's still going to do it.
Got one more question here, Greg, before we jump into the rapid fire portion, which is a great title here for this episode. But I want to talk to you about your Hall of Fame induction this past weekend to the Kentucky High School Sports Athletic Association. Three-way sport athlete. I was lucky to even be able to do one halfway okay, but you're talking about a three-way star, a state champion, which I asked Vince before, are you a state champion? And he said, I got two. So not to brag on Vince a little
Coach,
bit.
that's
but
just something you can say when you go to Trinity, Coach. You understand.
Only two. I mean, that was a down period.
That's right.
In recent memory, they only had two during the 4 years.
Well, just tell me what it's like completing the trifecta there with your brothers and joining the Hall of Fame, and what that's like the last couple of weeks, the fun jokes, but also the sentimental moments that you guys have experienced now being back home and all this kind of coming full circle.
Well, very proud and very humbled by it. I mean, it was a great class that went in. You look at some of those other names, and you're almost like, wow, I'm going to be even included somewhere in that mix. That's really it's hard to believe, but guys like Dave Cowens, who won NBA titles, and George Unseld, Charlie Tyree went in on this class. Jared Lorenzen and Derek Smith from Kentucky fame, they were in this class. Jermaine Brown was a great player. A lot of great coaches, and they had a cheerleading coach who went in, who's been doing it for many years. Great basketball players. Very proud to be even mentioned with that group. And it really makes me think back to it's special to me, really, because of how special those days were to me, playing football at Trinity, being part of their athletic community and their school community, and how much of an impact that had on us in everything we do, even to this day. So, there's probably nothing like a Friday night high school football game and the electricity and energy around it, whether it's on Shelbyville Road, whether it's here at L&N Stadium, even the old playoff games when they had the old double headers at Old Cardinal on a Friday and Saturday night. That's how they used to do the playoffs. It was like big time. And so that's why I think it means so much. And those days really mean a lot to me. And you know what, because of my family, this is everything we do. It's a team effort. It's all the family shares and everything, and it's part of it, really, because my brother was my quarterback. My dad was guiding us, and we got to do the same with Brian. My sister is a great athlete, but my mom was a great athlete. It's all a group effort. So that's why it's so special. So the banquet was really good and great. And I got to think back a little bit. I told the story, like, the Trinity St. X game was like the highlight. My signature moment was probably in Trinity St. X game when they were number one. They were actually the defending state champion, and they had won 20-something in a row, 25 plus games. But real competitive high school football back then. All the Catholic schools were about the same, and the public schools, there were some powers. And Fairdale was great, Ballard, Mayo at the time. I mean, it was it was tough to get in the playoffs. It only took 2 teams from each district.
Oh wow.
Catholic school games counted in your district standing.
Oh,
So it was tough, man. It was competitive, but we played St. X. So we were the underdog, and we started to drive the first quarter. We had 5 penalties in a row. I mean, we faced 2nd and 52 yards for a first down, 2nd down and 52. And Jeff hit me on 2 passes, one down the left sideline for about 35 of it, and then on 4th down behind the safety on a post pattern to get us down to the 1-yard line. And we got he snuck it in the next play. So when we converted 2nd and 52 and scored on the team that had the long winning streak,
yep.
it broke their will a little bit and their confidence. And we kind of launched from that, and we beat them 21-0, and got to relive and tell that story a little bit at the banquet. And but it was one of my best memories from that time. But great honor to be included with such unbelievable inductees, and very, very humbled that they thought of me.
Well, great stuff there. I can't thank you enough for sharing some of those details. A lot of learning on the episode tonight. When we do these, and a lot of times we know the history, we've heard the stories, but for Vince and I as young guys, this is incredible learning experience.
I can sit here and listen to this guy talk all day.
That's right, man. Well, let's
They don't
jump in.
teach that at Trinity. I thought they had a class maybe that
Football
Brohm
history
is
history of
right
Trinity
after-
football.
Well, let's jump into the final segment here. It's how we close the show on the series. Where are they now?
I was reading on the KHSA induction sheet, and they said that you never dropped a catchable ball. So how many of the uncatchable balls did Jeff throw you?
Well, I caught a lot of the uncatchable ones. Now.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, in a family of quarterbacks, if they throw it in the same zip code, they think you should have caught it.
Oh, you better have caught it.
In
Yep.
the same zip code as you. Yeah, no, Jeff. No, he threw. He put it. I wanted him to always throw it to me more than he did, but he threw it to me a lot. He threw catchable ball.
Next, what's your favorite thing about being back in Louisville?
I really just like how good it makes our family feel, actually, to be back. And I love the fan support. The welcome has been overwhelming, really. It's heartwarming and touching to us that people are excited to have us back. And we take that as we gotta succeed for a lot of people, and it means more doing it when everybody cares. You're not just doing it for W's. You're doing it. Everybody's invested. It does mean a lot more. That's probably just the people and our friends and family being excited about it. It's the best part.
What's the first spot you went to eat whenever you got back in town?
The first what?
First spot you went to eat at.
Oh, you know what?
I
I was coming back a lot anyway. Hey, Mike Lenning's is probably like a family spot we like going. Is Mike Lenning's? That's a Sunday afternoon or something. That's the type of place that
see y'all are that burner crowd.
pretty
You guys can come over to the J-Town crowd, and we'll take y'all to Pastime Fish House.
Oh, I
We'll do
love
that next
Tommy.
time.
Tommy, yes, good friend of mine too.
Yeah.
I think our family kind of grew up with Mike Lenning's background.
That's great. Who was your favorite Louisville football player growing up?
Well, you know what? Let's see. Growing up, back in those days, you had guys like Mark Clayton. I remember Mark Clayton being a receiver, and Otis Wilson was the linebacker. We had, when I was real small, I remember Nathan Poole was a running back, and Stu Stram, Hank Stram was his father, who coached the Kansas City Chiefs to their first Super Bowl. Stu Stram was the quarterback. These are just names I remember coming back then at that time. But those were kind of guys I remember from those days of the late 70s, early 80s that were really, really good. Ernest Givens, right before I got there. Ernest Givens, man, was exciting. He was an exciting player and went on to have a great career in the NFL as well. But Ernest Givens was somebody that was you pay to come see him play.
Okay. So what's the favorite city you've traveled to for an away game since you've been in general?
Well, you know what, as far as cities, I mean, we played a bowl game in the Bahamas.
Oh yeah.
Can't beat that.
We've done some great, I enjoyed last year. We played a game at Wrigley Field,
Wow.
which was really neat. A really great experience playing in Wrigley Field. And then, I think playing at Ohio Stadium is something unique. I played in the Swamp in Florida when I was a player. Ohio Stadium has a big time atmosphere that one of my best atmospheres when we were at Purdue, we played Louisville the first game in Lucas Oil.
That was fun.
That was an electric atmosphere, really, for that game. Lamar was still playing quarterback. Coach
Jair got hurt that game. Oh my gosh! I about had a
I
heart
mean,
attack.
we actually had him on the ropes a little bit.
Yes, you did.
We had him on the ropes a little bit, and we didn't know that was our first game there, so we didn't know if we were going to be any good or not. I think after that, we believed we might be able to be pretty good after that game. But that's one of the better atmospheres I think I've been in. But as far as cities, we've got the fortune to go to various exotic tropical places. Which are always good.
Cannon Jackson used to always come back and tell me about your all's boat trip to the Bahamas or.
Yes,
yeah,
we did. We went to Miami a couple times.
Yeah.
And, the Bahamas, and so we were fortunate to get to go to some of those places.
Favorite
Alabama. We played a lot of different great stadiums too.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, and hey, can't forget about Shelby campus now. I mean, that's the.
I know. I'm not a graduate of Shelby. That was the year before I got there. Was the last year. But yeah, nothing is like that from my stories we've heard.
Absolutely. What's your favorite route to run as a wide receiver? I'm a big slant guy. They give me a hard time for it. What's your favorite route?
I don't care. I think I was maybe known for a little bit for going across the middle, but that's not my favorite route. No, it's not my favorite. They had no rules back when I played about hitting the receiver, targeting the nags. It was encouraged.
Where would you want Jeff to put the ball in that situation?
Well, they always throw it high. Every quarterback, they throw it high on a slant.
Oh my gosh.
But that's not my favorite. No, you like the out and up. You like the double move, the out and up. That was you give a little fake out, and that way you can get loose. So that's probably the favorite route that I think a lot of receivers like that one. But I think that's probably my favorite.
All right. Well, we haven't seen this a while here at Louisville, so we'll ask you this: I formation or pistol? Favorite formation out of those two formations? If I could give you one.
Probably the pistol. Get the quarterback away from the center a little bit.
Man, I saw you all go. I saw y'all go under center at practice, and I was like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh my god!"
We're going to do that some. We will do that. We will definitely do that, and we will run the ball too. I mean, we kind of do some of the power. It's a power spread type of offense. I mean, we do some of the running, downhill running type of system. So. But I definitely would say sometimes I'm like, hey, I like that fullback too to lead that.
Thank you, Greg. Yes, you gotta put some respect on my position.
Even in the open field, I like if we're gonna run, let's get that extra blocker.
See,
so
you just made my day.
Better play action too, a little bit out of the under center. You can really prolong the fake. It gets people open. So we're gonna do a little of both. But I think the pistol it does give you run all the same plays, but the quarterback. It buys him a little more time.
Fantastic stuff. That'll wrap us up here. Where are they now? Greg Brohm. Greg, thank you so much for joining the show. I know you guys are extremely busy, but thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully our audience will enjoy this. Football, a few months away. It's going to be a long off season, but before we know it, we'll be out there, Cardinal Stadium, Murray State, home opener. Can't wait. Greg, thank you so much, sir.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.